Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest podcast. I am Eric Kane alongside Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, and Rob Lewis. A lot on the docket here today. Tennessee football spring practice is continuing on. Of course, Tennessee baseball is happening, but the biggest story and the biggest conversation piece here early in the week is, of course, Tennessee basketball, second straight year onto the Elite Eight, but Tennessee does fall in the Elite Eight, 69-50, at the hands of Houston. Obviously, not the outcome that anybody wanted. Certainly not the first half that anybody wanted or expected. But Rob Lewis, overall, Tennessee punch back in the second half just wasn't enough. Houston's the number one seed for a reason, and Houston showed that on Sunday afternoon.
No, it wasn't close to enough. I mean, that was. I mean, you just hate to see the season end like that for these guys. I mean, but that's. I mean, that's going to be what most people remember for a very long time. I mean, I think after enough time has passed, I mean, you'll remember that they had 9 scholarship guys. They won 30 games. You know, they were a 2 seed. They had some great wins along the way. Zakai, had a wonderful senior year. But, I mean, right now, what you remember about this team is that they gagged away a chance to go to the Final Four because they played probably the worst 20 minutes of the season.
Rob, I saw Wally Zerbiak say this. He thought maybe Tennessee was pressing too much early. You heard players afterwards talking about how much they wanted to get Coach Barnes there. What do you think caused, not the whole half, but what do you think caused the first 5 or 6 minutes of that basketball game on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was some of that, but I think Houston was a much better version of Tennessee. I mean, I think Houston exposed something that, I mean, we talked about here. I mean, people talked about on our message board. Anybody that casually followed Tennessee talked about it. I mean, Houston exposed that Tennessee was smoke and mirrors in the paint. I mean, the fact that they won 30 games and, did what they did without really having any kind of consistent offensive post presence. And we're really, just not that physical. I'm not saying the guys aren't tough. They play hard. But, I mean, Hubbard, you mentioned this yesterday. I mean, look at how thick, Houston's guys are, shoulders, legs, and compared to, Felix or Cade. And it's, men amongst boys might be a little strong, but I mean, Tennessee was overmatched. I think there's definitely something to the pressing. I mean, I think you look how emotional Zakai and Jemai were after the game. It's hard for me to think that they hadn't put so much pressure on themselves that they weren't affected. But man, I give all the credit to Houston for everything. I mean, they dominated Tennessee.
Is it fair to say, Rob, and I think just watching the game, it is fair to say, and I know there was some talk about it on Twitter and everything, but I mean, what Houston did to Tennessee is what Tennessee does to a lot of teams, right?
Sure,
I mean,
absolutely. I mean, and I don't think Tennessee shrank from it. I mean, I don't think they were intimidated or anything like that. I mean, I've seen some of that. I mean, I think Houston's just bigger, stronger, and very well coached. I mean, obviously Keldon Sampson has a plan and has recruited to that plan and for a lot of years. And again, I certainly think that Tennessee put some pressure on themselves and were adversely affected. But man, again, I wouldn't take anything away from Houston and how they showed up and showed out. And it's just, again, you hate it for the guys because, I mean, for everything they did, this is not what you want, to be on the tombstone.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the hard part, Rob, is that, listen, winning those games are obviously hard. Getting to the Final Four is not easy for anybody. You have to play your best when your bracket goes chalk. And AP, you can jump in here too. But when your bracket goes chalk, Rob, you have to play your best in that game. That is not a game you can get away in the first couple rounds with playing okay if you're a higher seed and survive. But when you're in a 1 versus 2 type game that Tennessee's been in the last 2 years, you have to play your best. And the fact that Tennessee didn't play their best, didn't come close to playing their best. And I know Houston exposed some of that, but Tennessee didn't play good basketball in the first 20 minutes. That's the part that's, you can't, I don't want to say no show. That's not fair, but you can't play that poorly and not give yourself a chance to win. That's what's going to sting for a long, long time. They just didn't give themselves a chance.
Hubbard, I think you can say no show, and I think that is fair. They no showed the first half. I mean, they scored 15 points, and I mean, I think that's realistic. I mean, Rob's right. I mean, their ability to not be able to dump it down in and get a bucket in the paint. The fact they won 30 games. I mean, to me, it really does speak to the coaching staff. Finding a way, and it speaks to how good Zakai was. how good Gainey was. I mean, Gainey's so, just such a consistent player. I mean, like, just really turned into a fantastic player here. And then, of course, Chaz doing the whole, 3-point thing. But I mean, they no-showed in the first half. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I'm with Rob. You don't want that on the tombstone. And that's not, 15 years from now, people are going to remember Zakai for everything else. They're not going to remember him for this one game. They're not going to remember. I mean, yeah, I mean, it sucks in the moment, but, it is what it is. They've got to figure out some things in the post. Is it Estrella? Is missing him that big of a deal? Because I'm not sure between now and November, Felix Okpara is all of a sudden going to become, somebody that you can dump it into and get things out of down low. Cade Phillips, we'll see if he can develop. There's just going to be a lot of change to this basketball program this offseason, whether it's the additions in the portal and even just some of the guys down in the paint that will be back.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is going to be fascinating. And here's my question, Rob, to you. I mean, is it as simple as you got to find somebody that you can dump the ball to in the paint, or do you just need a guy who can go get you a bucket? And whatever position that is, whether that's a taller, and I'm not, again, what Zakai's done is great, but is that a taller point guard who can finish at the rim? Is that a stretch four? I mean, does it have to be a back to the basket, dump it down in their post? Or was this team just void of a guy that you said, hey, I've got to have a bucket, go get a bucket? Because the closest guy to that to me was Jordan Gainey, Rob.
Yes.
And so my question, Rob, is does it need to be a 6'11" back to the basket guy, or do they just need a guy who you can clear out and you can go tell him to go get you a bucket?
No, I don't think they need a 7-footer post. I mean, post guy. And how many skilled guys like that are in college basketball anyway? I mean, I don't think. I think they need to get a little more skilled at the post. No, I don't think they need to get a 20-point scorer. I think it's way more important to get a guy like you're talking about, Huber. Maybe like a 6'6" version of Jordan Gainey, if that guy's out there. I mean, certainly, there's a bunch of names out there that people are floating that would fit that bill. But I just think score. I wouldn't necessarily pencil that guy into any position. I do think they'd probably like to get a little more athletic and add some length in the post. But then, you also bring JP back. That's kind of, I know we've all mentioned, but getting him back is a big deal. And however, the void in the perimeter. I mean, it's common in college basketball all over the place, but it's the first time we've seen it here in Tennessee with the way they're going to be replacing everything because of Jemai, because of Zakai. There's been continuity there in the backcourt, and Rick's really had a luxury. So yeah, that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, like who's the guy? Again, I know the season just ended. I know it's still fresh, and I get all that, and we're talking about next year. But like, who's the guy for Tennessee basketball right now?
He's not on the team.
There's not one.
He's not on the team.
I mean, and that's why these summer workouts and these exhibitions and fall's so important. Because a leader. Obviously, they need to continue to develop as basketball players, but a leader's got to emerge. But I mean, that's kind of scary, right? And I mean, I know this is college basketball and it turns over every other year, but no Jemai, no Zakai,
no Gainey.
No Gainey. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see who that guy is that steps up.
I mean, it's almost like they're becoming really high level, really well-funded AAU programs because they're changing every spring. You might have some kid that came in, as a 13-year-old and stayed with your program, all the way through 4 years, knows your plays, knows your system, but it's like a ultra high end AAU program right now.
And as a result of that, Rob, do you think as time goes, the appreciation for this team will, once you get past it, is going to grow? Because you did have, you had two guys, and I know Meshack was different than Ziegler from a production standpoint offensively, but you had two guys who were the torchbearers, if you will, for your program. I mean, they carried the fight, or whatever you want to say, every day, and there were guys that fans got to know. And now you're going to become more of a transitional team, Rob. There's just no way to avoid it. Do you think the appreciation for what fans have gone through with these guys the last 4 years is going to grow as a result of what what's getting ready to happen with this program?
I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be better or worse, but you'll never see another team like it. I don't think with the head coach, with Zakai, with Jemai. I mean, think about it. I mean, Zakai dealt with some of that. Jemai dealt with some of that. But dude, what's a kid like Zakai going to get offered coming off his sophomore year? In this day and age, I mean, Zakai had to, certainly had some options. Jemai's had some options. But those things are going through the roof. I mean, for experienced kids that are coming back to college and aren't quite good enough to go to the NBA, but are really good college players. I mean, it's keeping those guys for 4 years now. It's going to be ridiculous. I mean, because they make so much of a difference, in basketball. So I don't think we'll see another team like it. I really hope I'm wrong, but I don't think you're going to see a connection between players and fans like this.
Let me ask you this, Rob, because I thought about this yesterday. Both teams, very lovable fan base, adored both teams. I recognize that, but this team with Jemai and Zakai and everybody else compared to the Grant, the Admiral, the Bone, the Bowden, the Turner. I mean, that team was a big time fan favorite as well, correct?
Sure, but I mean, you can point to 2 guys on this team that are 4-year players. I mean, Grant left early after 3, but I mean, how many guys? You didn't have anybody on that team that came in from somewhere. I mean, those were all homegrown guys. I mean, they might have left at different times, but I mean, John Fulkerson, you mentioned Grant, Jordan Bone, Lamonte Turner. I mean, all those guys were homegrown. Kyle Alexander. I mean, that's a dude that came in and looked like Bambi, over the age. So, and again, I'm not saying anything bad about, Chaz or Igor or Felix, any of those guys. I mean, great kids, high character kids, but I just think the 4-year homegrown, stars that fans fall in love with, that little kids. I mean, think about it. You saw Zakai for the first time when you were a 7th grader, and now you're, a sophomore in high school. I mean, you've made a connection with that kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, as a fan, that's the only guy you know. If you're a younger fan, I mean, that's the guy right? I mean, and again, I think the other thing too, Rob, to the point you were making earlier, I mean, Grant and Admiral and that group, they didn't have a choice. If they went somewhere, they had to set out. These guys have options every year, and they chose to stay and be a part of this program and go. Now, did they? I mean, did the whole basketball world come after those 2? No, I'm not saying that, but you're living in a world where guys have options every year, and those guys didn't explore their options.
Nothing stopping Felix Okpara from leaving again. Right.
Sure.
I mean, you can just kind of bounce around and do what you want to do and shoot your shot and try to get the money you want.
And there was never a rumor. There was never a transfer watch with the 2 that are leaving the program that were here for 4 years. There was never a story written in admin that said Zakai Ziegler's entering the portal, because it was never a thought, Rob. Nobody ever considered that, because he never did, right? Same with Meshack. I mean, there was never any real thought that those guys weren't going to finish what they started here, which is just unique in this day and age of basketball and in college sports in general. I mean, I think that's to your point, Rob, what you're saying. It'll be hard pressed to ever see anything like that again.
And it's still fun. It's still entertaining. It's just different.
Yeah.
And again, it's not like Tennessee's recruiting a bunch of mercenaries. I mean, there's still, Rick Barnes is, recruiting a certain kind of student athlete, and that's going to fit his culture and his program. I mean, I'm not throwing any shade on the kids that take advantage of the freedom of movement and NIL, but it's just different when you see guys every day for 4 years.
Rob, let me ask you this, and listen, there's 1,000 names in the portal right now, so I don't want to run through names. We know Tennessee's going to bring in the kid from Virginia, or he's in for a visit. When you look at the numbers that they have and what they are losing, where do they and what they're bringing into the high school ranks? Where do they have to go in the portal? What's the position and how this thing you think lays out? What do you think the potential number is for transfers and how this thing looks for Rick Barnes?
I mean, I think I would say a handful, Hubbard. And by handful, I mean in between 4 and 6. I mean, I think 4 is the. I mean, I would say 4 is the minimum. I mean, maybe it's not, but it feels that way to me. And then after that, you maybe a couple of best availables that can help you. But I feel like you got to get 4. And I mean, it's it's pretty simple math. I mean, you just lost. You're losing the 3 best scorers on your team, and your 2 primary ball handlers in Gainey and Ziegler. I mean, you gotta go there, and man, I mean, how tough is it going to be to upgrade at point guard? I mean, it's going to be tough, but so I mean, you're going to have to go to hope that the sum of the parts adds up to more than what you're losing. But I will say this: I think Tennessee's going to be aggressive, and I'm not saying that they're going to be throwing around mad stacks of cash, but I don't think Tennessee's in the middle class when it comes to NIL and basketball at all.
Rob, in that same vein, when you talk about, and again, names are going to fly, and who knows who else is going to enter the portal and all those types of things. I get all that. How hard, how big of a challenge will it be to coach a team with that many newcomers? And what's the key to being? What do you think the key will be for this team to be able to build moving? I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
Jamai helped recruit Dalton Connect and created the family environment with him, and Ziegler, was with Chaz and those guys. Without having a face, how do you get, as you put it, this what will be a newly assembled AAU team, for lack of better words? How do you get that to come together?
Well, I think the biggest part of it, and I think the staff has been great at it, is they haven't brought anybody in that rocked the boat. They haven't brought in a bad locker room guy. They haven't brought in a bad teammate, and that's tough in the transfer portal, because I'm sure there's some guys that came here and didn't get the minutes they thought they would get or whatever, but they haven't had anybody that was a problem, and that to me is, I mean, I don't know if number 1 on the list, but it'd be pretty close when you're talking about having to assemble a whole new team. And I think the staff has been great at it. I would expect it to continue. And man, I mean, if you listen to Coach Barnes talk, I mean, it's tough love here. It's hard, but I think kids appreciate the barefaced honesty that they get here if they've been around enough to have been lied to and not gotten the things that were promised or not had things work out. And that's one thing that I think helps Tennessee. It won't be Zakai or Jamai telling them, but whoever's here, K, JP, Bishop Boswell, whoever's still around will tell me, yeah, everything this old man tells you is exactly what it's going to be like. It's not going to be easy. And I think that I think the kids, and I think especially parents that have seen their kids, go through a tough spot, appreciate truth and honesty, even if it's not exactly what they want to hear. So I mean, I think that's why Tennessee does great in the portal, and I think that's the key, is recruiting the right kind of guys that fit your culture.
Yeah, I don't think there's any better example of that than Jabari Meshak's answer at the podium, where he talked about, we wanted to get him to the Final Four, we wanted to do it for him, and then he went for about a minute and he talked about how much he appreciated, and there were times he didn't want to talk to him, and there was, he laid out the tough love part, but wrapped it around the fact that obviously they have a really close relationship and a great amount of respect for each other. But I thought it was pretty interesting. It wasn't, he didn't sit up there and say, hey, we all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. I mean, like, it's hard, but because of the love we have for each other and the care we have for each other, we all wanted to get Coach Barnes to the Final Four. I thought his answer was as raw could get.
Sure. And Zakai the same way. But I think that, because of how you see kids like that respond to him, I mean, he's able to, I wouldn't have thought this at the front end, Hubbard, but man, he's flourishing in the transfer portal, because he's able to take these guys and get them and build a team in a hurry, common goals. And again, broken record, so much of that is get the right kind of kids in your program. But I think we've seen the last 2 years that he's been able to add a bunch of pieces, not as many last year, but Dalton was the most dominant piece on that team. And, he inserted him into a veteran lineup and made it work. And this year, 3 new starters, 60% of your starting lineup were transfers. He made it work. So, the dude is, he's just found his stride late in life, but he's good at this.
Do you think that's just simply because there's enough kids in the portal that have seen a side of it you don't see coming out of high school, and so the transparency, the rawness, and the honesty to them means more than it did when they were 17 years old looking for the shiny object coming out of high school? Rob?
Sure, probably. And also, guys, I mean, you're guaranteed to, pretty much at this point in time to play in the NCAA tournament, which is what everybody wants to do. And the fact that Dalton Knecht went from being second team All Big Sky Conference to 17th, the 17th pick in the draft doesn't hurt at all. So, but yeah, I think there's a lot of things that make Tennessee attractive in the portal era, especially to mature kids that know what they're after.
And Chaz Lanier never won a postseason game ever, and throughout his career in the conference tournament game, he was one and done. And so, come to Tennessee and scoring 29 points in the opening round, and leading Tennessee in scoring the first 3 games for sure. You kind of just touched on that right there, but how much does Rick Barnes enjoy this process? It's got to be tiresome, but also I think that he really, really enjoys building this team and constructing this roster the way that he wants to.
I think he enjoys. I mean, I don't know that he actually enjoys every minute of the next 3 or 4 weeks.
No.
But the end product, I think he really enjoys. I think he loves being able to come off a season where everything that he hates about his team is extremely fresh in his mind, and the very next day he can go about fixing it. I mean, I think that appeals to the impatient nature of his personality greatly. Now, again, maybe he didn't like everything he's got to do in these next, the next month, but I also think that at his age, he loves the fact that he's never going to go sit and watch a 15-year-old kid practice in the high school gym again.
So Tennessee basketball season has come to an end in the Elite Eight for the second straight year. Now it's on to the transfer portal season, and no better place to stay up to date on everything you need to know Tennessee basketball roster management-wise than right here with Rob Lewis and Grant Ramey at Volquest.com. So we got you covered here. This past weekend, as Tennessee football returned to the practice field following spring break this past week, where some recruits were on hand over on the Hill this weekend. Austin Price, who were some of the noteworthy names on campus, and what was some of the chatter and the buzz leaving a football practice?
Well, obviously, we start with 2 of the biggest ones, right? Joel Wyatt. Tennessee continues to be in a good spot there. He called him top 2. I still think Tennessee's the leader there privately, but we'll go off the top 2 stuff that he said. Tennessee's recruiting him to play on both, on defense really. But I mean, he can play at a number of different spots. He can play safety. He can play Leo, which is kind of where Tennessee's recruiting him at. He's been recruited by different schools for different positions on both sides of the ball. Just a really long, athletic kid. He's the number 1 athlete in the country by on-3, out of Belt Buckle, Tennessee, down there, in Middle Tennessee, south of Nashville, and a good player. Xavier Griffin, the USC commit. Tennessee is deep in that one. He had a fantastic visit. Supposed to catch up with him in the next day or so, but by all accounts, Tennessee has made a real move there, and they're definitely in play for Xavier Griffin. I think Tennessee's done a great job with Keyshawn Stansel, defensive lineman out of the state of North Carolina. He's now been here 2 times, since late January, and the Vols have, definitely kind of positioned themselves to be a real player there. He loves Rodney Garner's honesty. He loves Coach Chop. Really like that one a lot. Emmanuel Ruffin, kid, big defensive tackle. He went here from a visit and then went to the Under Armour camp over in Nashville and was one of the top performers. And that's an interior defensive lineman.
And that's the one Tennessee offered in the last month or so, right?
Correct. That's right. Tennessee obviously has some ends there with Coach Chop down in the state of Alabama. And so they're trying to be a heavy player there. And obviously, he's been here a couple of times since the offer. And, he seems to be liking Tennessee a good amount. So, Tennessee will continue to have players come in. We've now reached the 1st of April. And that means, you're going to have Savion Hyder and some of those, the running backs and some of those, players coming in town. Hezekiah Harris, another kid out of the state of Alabama, is committed to Auburn. That Coach Chop has been leaning on really hard. He was here for a junior day back in January. He's going to be here again in the next week or so. So Tennessee's got a lot more players coming to campus over the next 2 weeks leading into the spring game.
AP, where are they with Leo Delaney?
That's an interesting one. It felt like kind of some of his stuff stalled out, back in the fall because this was hurt most of last season. But I mean, he's back on campus. I think Tennessee's still recruiting him actively, and we'll kind of see where things go from there.
So you mentioned, Hyder and some of these other guys. Obviously, I know you don't have a list in front of you, but some more big-time names expected to be in. You got 2 weeks left of spring practice. Which weekend do you think will – I mean, I would assume the orange and white game weekend will be bigger, but 2 more opportunities really to get a lot of guys on campus this weekend and next weekend.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be just weekends, Eric. I mean, kids are taking active visits. I mean, some kids are on spring break this week. Not everybody takes a spring break in the first week of March or the second week of March or the third week of March. Other states take them the last week of March, first week of April. So you're going to have potentially some kids rolling here in the next couple of days for practice. Obviously, Tennessee had the scrimmage last night, and then they've got practice coming up on Wednesday and then Saturday again. So it doesn't have to be weekends. They're always poised to have players on campus, including Graham Simpson, who will be here, the 2028 quarterback from Martin Westview. He will be here tomorrow for Wednesday's practice.
Well, and there's a reason Tennessee practices on Saturday for 3 straight weeks, right?
No doubt.
You got 2 Saturday practices in the orange and white game. That's all centered around recruiting as a part of why you do that. You're trying to take full advantage of that. And so, well, it'll be interesting to see where Simpson is and where that recruitment goes. Obviously, his brother is at Alabama. Everybody knows, the recruitment that Ty had. Josh Heupel had just been here. Graham's putting up huge numbers at Tennessee or at Martin Westview as a young player. So that one's going to be fun to watch over the next few years. A long ways to the finish line there, but that one's going to be interesting.
It is, and Tennessee's yet to offer. Could that come tomorrow? I guess potentially. But I mean, you're right. I mean, the numbers last year. I mean, he's threw 56 touchdowns and 1 interception. The 1 interception was against Alcoa in the state championship game. I mean, Alcoa moves up to 4A. Westview is in 3A still. You got Asa Barnes. He's getting offered by a lot of places: Alabama, Ohio State, and several others. Florida State, Florida. That's the running back. They got Graham Simpson, who's going to be offered by anybody and everybody. I mean, you talk about set up to make a run the next 3 years in 3A in West Tennessee. They are.
Yeah, and like you said, it certainly doesn't hurt when you get Alcoa out of that division. Alcoa moves up, and Alcoa is still going to be just fine, in my opinion.
I don't know. Those Gibbs Eagles, over.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how Graham develops physically. How much taller does he get?
Yeah.
How much does he fill out? What is it? I mean, he obviously mechanically can throw the football.
He throws it better than Ty at this current age.
Yeah, but what is that? How much further does that develop? I think and how much bigger does he get physically? It's going to be interesting to watch. I don't think anybody's going to be afraid of his size, but how much different does he become if there's another growth spurt in there and as his body fills out as well?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, again, I think depending on how much taller he gets will determine, like how many offers he ends up with. But I mean, listen, he's going to be offered by everybody on the earth, right? I mean, it's going to be a who's who, just because, again, he's well put together. Now, I do think it would help him if his brother plays well at Alabama this fall, just from a standpoint of if Ty doesn't play well, does it give schools pause on Graham? I don't know. I mean, but it shouldn't, but how coaches are. I mean, these are same group of coaches that talk about ankle stiffness and bone density and all those things.
It's all important.
Coaches sometimes overthink it. Yeah, no doubt about it.
It's all important. All right, so plenty of Tennessee recruiting notes and everything coming over the next couple of weeks as spring practice continues. All that and more right here at Volquest.com. Out the door, let's talk a little bit of Tennessee baseball, number 1 ranked team in the country. Went on the road this past weekend, swept on paper, this is a perfect example of what the SEC is, right? I mean, South Carolina is not good this year. On paper, they're 1-8 or whatever. I mean, just not a good team. Got a head coach that is a very, very historically great head coach in this college game, but is back for his first year, stepping into a world that he is completely different than the one that he retired in 2021. Name, image, and likeness, transfer portal. But South Carolina just never went away all weekend long. They just kept punching. That's SEC baseball. It's never easy. But Tennessee does get a sweep and continues to just trot along, Brent Hubbs, and obviously your best player, Gavin Keelan, who did make a pinch hit appearance on Saturday, so that was noteworthy, but still without your, arguably your best pitcher in A.J. Russell, your best hitter in Gavin Keelan, and Tennessee's sweeping teams on the road in SEC play. It's pretty good stuff right now.
Yeah, and again, I thought they had to deal with a little bit of some adversity, and
Yeah.
how are they going to handle the punchback, and particularly on Saturday, I thought they were good, and they're getting great pitching. It's kind of platoon pitching. It's not a bullpen game on Sunday, right? But they're kind of rolling with 1A and 1B at starter is what it feels like right now on Sunday, and they seem pretty comfortable with that. I don't think Liam Doyle is pitching bad. I think that's false to say he's pitching poorly. I do think, as you said the last couple of weeks, it feels like he's laboring a little bit. I mean, it's like he's nibbling a little bit, looking for strikeouts. I think he's got to just kind of let the guys behind him make some plays and get some ground ball outs a little bit more. I think Phillips is doing a great job of just pounding the zone with strikes and kind of playing the game that way. And I know Tennessee had a couple of plays, Eric, on Saturday, I guess it was, that they should have made in the field, or maybe it was Sunday. But overall, I thought Tennessee was great at first base on the whole weekend. I thought they were, for a position that you weren't real sure kind of where they were going to be defensively. I thought he was terrific at first base this weekend. I think that's a big win and a big move in the right direction for them in the field.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how things work. I mean, Andrew Fisher was brought here to play third base. I mean, it wasn't like, hey, I mean, nothing's guaranteed, right? But it wasn't like the recruiting pitch wasn't, hey, let's get you here, corner infielder. The recruiting pitch was, hey, come join a list of a long line of successful third basemen we've had in our program. And then he gets that injury there leading up to the season, and doesn't want to throw an awful lot, so you're putting him to first base, and it just kind of worked out to where Tennessee's better with him at first, and you're seeing that especially now, and he's gotten really good. I mean, the two double plays he was a part of arguably were two of the biggest plays of the game on Saturday. The one in the ninth inning with the stretch, and the one that he started to in the eighth inning to keep the game tied at 5-5 at that time. I mean, the pick, good throw to second, and then back to first. He's been really, really good, and of course his bat has come along. I know it was a slow start to the season for him, but he's now leading Tennessee in home runs, which is what you expected when he went out and got him via the transfer portal. He's one RBI back of Reese Chapman and Hunter Inslee for the team lead. So, yeah, I mean, this is the Andrew Fisher that you were expecting, out of the transfer portal from Ole Miss, and it's really, really good to see him come around at first base. So I've been really impressed there. And then, I mean, guys, what more can you say about Ariel Antigua? I wrote about it in the 3-2-1. Obviously, he's not an offensive threat, shortstop. I think he had maybe a hit or two this weekend. He's never going to be a stud in the box. But what he does with the glove, I mean, take Saturday, for instance. That play where he was ranging well to his right deep in the 5-6 hole, the momentum took him to third to get the force, and I mean, he gave so much energy on that play that, I think he was out of breath. Like, he lost took his breath away, essentially. And, that was a huge play in the game. Tony Vitello said after the game, literally, that was probably one of the best plays I've ever seen. And you're getting the plays that look tough for people that look just super routine for him. He's been awesome, Austin.
I got two for you. Yeah. One, to keep in that same way. When Keelan is officially back in the field, does Marin just go out and they keep what they've been doing with Antigua at short and Curley at third? Is that how you envision this?
So they've got plenty of options, obviously.
Sometimes they'll move it around, bounce it around, but do you think that predominantly you'll see that?
I mean, well, why not, right? And I think Manny Marin's going to be really good. He's already flashed several times this year. He's given up some runs playing second base for Tennessee the last 2 weekends. Levi Clark is just going through it right now. He's not hitting, and Tennessee still needs to kind of try to get him going because they're going to need him. But right now, I think those two guys, those two freshmen, are the odd men out. I think you're at your best right now with Ariel at short, Gavin at second, Dean, who made a lot of great plays at third. He's a natural third baseman at third base. And then, of course, Jay Abernathy on left. Dalton Bargo, who's hotter than a hiccup right now as your designated hitter. That's what I would do, Austin. And, there's versatility there, and Tony will shift it up every now and again. But that is how I would roll out with right now.
Which rolls me right into my next comment. How did we go from Bargo, who basically didn't really even play that first SEC series, to being literally the hottest player on the team and has done it several weekends in a row? This wasn't just a one-off weekend. The guy has produced clutch home runs, clutch doubles. I mean, again, last year, just a platoon guy, got a couple of starts in Omaha, didn't do much with it, which is his hometown, and then didn't really even factor hard that first SEC series, and now all of a sudden he's as important as anybody.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show you that baseball is, I mean, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a long season, and there are going to be highs and lows throughout the season. And I know, as fans, it's sometimes we're not patient enough to kind of stick with that. But I think Dalton Bargo is a perfect example of that. I mean, it's a guy that Tony loves for his versatility. It's a guy that has been hitting since he's been in this league. Started, I know it was Missouri, not a very good program, but he started as a true freshman as the designated hitter from Missouri. So he's been in this league for a long time. And, since Alabama, what was it, game 2, where, game 1 he got the start and didn't do well. Game 2 came off the bench, had 2 RBI knocks, and then had a triple, had a home run, and then he's followed that up with what he did this past weekend. He's been awesome, and so that's been really, really cool to see. And you just want a guy like that has all that versatility. He's hitting second in the lineup right now because Tony loves to, to stack the right, left throughout the order. But he's been great. And so, again, I just think that's a classic example of, just like right now, Levi Clark has not got it right now. And he's a true freshman. He's going through it. He's learning. Levi Clark's going to be fine eventually. But right now, it's not great. I mean, that's where Dalton Bargo was 2 weeks ago. And so if you just be patient, continue to give them chances to break out of that slump, good things going to happen, and some great things are happening for Dalton Bargo. All right, a lot going on right now. Basketball season now turning to the off season, and we'll see what happens. Of course, a key transfer expected to be on campus here in the early week, and we'll have updates on that, and we'll see where Tennessee goes in constructing its new roster. Tennessee spring football, practice or scrimmage for the first time on Monday night. Recruits coming into campus, all that and more, leading into the orange and white game on April the 12th. We'll have all those updates over here at Volquest.com. And, of course, Tennessee baseball, as it will take on a rematch of the College World Series Finals this weekend. Texas A&M and Tennessee, 2 different spots right now. A&M struggling, Tennessee soaring. We'll see what happens in the rematch of the Vols and Aggies coming up this weekend. All that and more right here at Volquest.com. For Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, Awesome Price, I'm Eric Kane. Come check us out, $1 for 7 days. Check out what we have to offer right here. Great deal to get your foot in the door. We'd love to have you. All that and more right here at Volquest.com.